So how do you surrender your fears, your worries, and your dreams to God without taking them back again? I'm going to unpack it for you in today's video. So are you struggling to release those fears, those worries, that control, and those dreams to God? Today I'm going to share with you 3 key steps you can take to fully surrender to the will of God. My name is Tammy Rotzel from the website Footprints of Inspiration and a Faithful God podcast, where I teach women how to let go of that need for perfection in their faith walk so they can show up perfectly imperfect and create a deep and meaningful relationship with God. So as I mentioned, I'm going to share with you 3 key steps you can take to fully surrender to God without feeling like you're giving everything up. So let's dive right in. Surrender starts with self-awareness, and sometimes we don't even recognize that we're clinging to that fear, that worry, that anxiety. It's almost become a habit for us to do those things. So we first need to, take a good look within, identify what it is we need to surrender. And the beautiful part is that we don't have to try and figure it out on our own. All we have to do is make that ask. If you've been following me for any length of time on this channel, you know I say that all the time. If we need help with something, all we have to do is go to God and make that ask. In fact, in Psalm chapter 139, verse 23 and 24, it actually teaches us and gives us the words to use to go to God, or as we go to God and make that ask. It says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in a way everlasting." You see, we don't have to sugarcoat anything. We don't have to hide from God, and we don't have to figure out all the answers before we even go to Him. All we have to do is go to Him and say, "Lord, search me. Lord, show me any ways that anything that I am still clinging to. Whether it's dreams, whether it's fears, whether it's worry or that need for control, show me, Lord, reveal it to me." This is a great time to use a prayer journal and to jot down those thoughts and to jot down the things, that you start to feel and hear God calling you to, or those things that you feel like He's letting you know that it's time to let them go. If you need help with a prayer journal, I actually have 15 of my favorite prayer journals over on the blog. I'll actually put a link for that in the show notes below. But this is a perfect time. And again, we start with that self-awareness by going to God and saying, "Lord, what areas do I need to release to you? What areas am I still clinging to?" Once we've done that, then we move on to step number 2, where we surrender that control. You see, we've got to understand that surrender isn't losing control, it's placing control in God's hands. That's a tough one, isn't it? Because it feels like when we release those things to God, it feels like if we surrender those and we aren't juggling all the balls and we don't have our hand in it, we feel that false sense of security by holding on to those things. But the truth is, that isn't losing control. Even though it feels like it, this is one of those things that we aren't going to stand on our feelings. We're going to stand on what we know to be true. What do we know to be true? That God is in control, and that by releasing that to Him, we will actually gain more security. This is going to take practice. It's going to feel itchy and hard and scratchy. It is not going to feel good at first. That's normal, but you do it anyway. You still do it. You repeat it. "Lord, I surrender to you." And here's the thing, you're going to have to do this every single day. Sometimes you're going to have to do this over and over and over again. You know, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6, it teaches us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." This is one of those if-then situations in the Bible. If you trust in God, right? If you surrender and release this to Him, then He will make your path straight. True surrender means choosing to release it to God, even when you have no idea how it's going to play out, what's going to happen next. True surrender is about choosing to do that. Remember, trusting God isn't a feeling, it's a choice. And again, it's a choice we have to make every day, and some days we have to make it again and again and again. Here's the thing I want you to remember, my friend. Holding on to control actually causes and increases anxiety. Did you catch that? By that trying to grasp control and not allowing, not releasing it and surrendering it to God, it actually, it creates that false sense of security, thinking that, oh, if we control all the things, if we have them and take care of all of them on our own, we're going to, experience more peace. But that's not true. That's not true at all. That actually increases our anxiety and our fears. But when we release it to God, when we continue to practice doing this, we get persistent and consistent of choosing to surrender to God. That's when we'll start to experience that peace that is above and goes beyond anything we could ever understand on our own. So many times I hear from my students, Tammy, nothing has changed, yet everything has changed. When I chose to surrender to God, that's when everything changed. My circumstances didn't change, but everything did. And that is a powerful place to be, my friend. You know, one of my absolute favorite verses in the Bible. In fact, I actually have it hanging up right in front of me on the wall in front of me in my office, but it's Proverbs 16, verse 3. And here's what it says. Put God in charge of your work, then what you've planned will take place. Did you catch that? Another if-then situation. If you put God in charge, if you surrender your dreams, your fears, your worries, all of everything, if you surrender everything to God, then what you've planned will take place. Now that's a powerful one. And again, it's my favorite one. I've got it on a big print. I made a big print for myself in the office, and I've got it right across from me. I can see it all the time. I look up and I read it all the time. When I surrender, and same thing for you, when you surrender, then what you've planned will take place. And God will use that time to shape and mold you and help you come into alignment with his will for your life. You can pray something as simple as, Lord, I don't understand, but I trust you. I give this situation to you. This is a powerful way to start to learn to surrender to God, to literally do that. Imagine yourself handing that over to God, whatever it is, Lord, whatever it is, this fear that I have, this control that I have, imagine yourself handing it over as you say, Lord, I don't understand, but I trust you. I surrender this to you. And so as you continually do that, as you get persistent and consistent in your pursuit, of surrender, it's going to become easier and easier. And over time, you're going to create that habit of surrendering it to him. When something happens, when something starts to feel stressful, when something feels like out of your control, it'll become second nature for you to go to God. Now, before we get into the third key step of surrendering to God, I want to invite you to hop on over and grab my free cheat sheet, 7 no-fluff ways to grow closer to God. Listen, I created this cheat sheet for women, for busy women who want to grow closer to God, but their days just feel so hectic. It feels just like one more thing you've got to do is making that time for God. I'm going to show you how to actually create these spiritual habits, how to actually create a lifestyle of staying connected to God through these 7 no-fluff ways. What you can do is hop on over to footprintsofinspiration.com/grow closer. That's footprintsofinspiration.com/grow closer. Of course, I'll put the link for it in the show notes below for you, but hop on over, grab that free cheat sheet and download that today and start working through those steps as you learn to create and forge a real relationship with God. So number 3, now I've already touched on this just a little bit, but what we've got to understand about surrender is this is a daily practice. This is not a one and done thing. Surrender requires us to show up every day and to surrender our lives to God every single day. And as I mentioned earlier, some days you're going to have to do it over and over and over again. And that is totally normal. That does not make you a bad Christian. It doesn't mean you'll never be able to fully surrender to God. That doesn't mean that at all. So let go of those feelings, right? You're going to grant yourself some grace and know going into this that it's something you're going to have to do again and again. But I don't want you to think of it as a bad thing. So often we think that when we're having to repeat it over and over and over again, we feel like, golly day, I'll never measure up. Golly day, I'll never ever be able to do this. But that's not the truth at all. What that means is that's an opportunity for you to rely on God more. Stop thinking of this as a bad thing, as a failure. It doesn't make you a failure as a Christian when you have to surrender over and over and over again. No, what that means is you're learning to rely on God. You know, in Luke chapter 9, verse 23, it teaches us this. If any of you want to walk my path, you're going to have to deny yourself. You'll have to take up your cross every day and follow me. Surrender isn't something you do once and forget about it. It's a daily choice to trust God with your heart, your worries, and your future. Even when those old fears creep in, you surrender them all over again. Now, a great practical way to apply this is actually to keep a surrender list in your prayer journal. Those things that you feel God calling you to release to Him, those fears, those worries, those dreams, everything that you need to release and surrender to Him, keep a prayer journal and write a list, a surrender list down, and then picture yourself actually and saying those words out loud. Lord, I surrender this to you. Lord, I surrender my child to you. Lord, I surrender my dreams to you. Lord, I surrender what I want, and I want your will instead. By creating that surrender list, that's going to help you build that surrender muscle, right? That's going to help you build that up and help it become more and more second nature for you. Another thing that you can do are breath prayers. We talk about breath prayers in another video, and I will actually drop the link for that in the show notes below. It's a video all about what to pray when you don't know what to say. And I talk in there about breath prayers, but simply put, you're just going to breathe in either a name or attribute of God as you take a deep breath in, Lord Father. As you blow out or exhale, what you do then is just stand on a declaration or an affirmation. I trust you. So, Lord God, I trust you. Breath prayers will be very, very powerful as you're learning to surrender in these 3 key steps. So I just want to recap those 3 steps for you one more time. Number 1, recognize what you're holding on to. And go to God, make that ask. Ask for His help in this. Number 2, then release control and trust God's plan. Again, you're going to have to do that. As I mentioned in step number 3, make surrender a daily practice. This requires a consistent and persistent pursuit of our Father, of surrendering to God. It doesn't make you a failure when you have to do it over and over again. That's totally normal. And guess what? You can celebrate that, my friend, because that is a beautiful opportunity for you to grow closer and closer to God. Remember, surrender isn't about losing control. It's about gaining peace through trusting God. Because when you let go, you make room for His best in your life. That's a powerful one, right? So, my friend, I'm going to hold you accountable. I want to hear from you. Drop in the comments below. By the way, this is a judge-free space right here. No judgment. We're all in the trenches together trying to live this life on earth one day at a time. But I want to hold you accountable. I want to hear from you. Drop in the comments below and tell me the one thing you feel like you need to surrender to God. My team and I love to pray. We actually have a prayer list for our entire community. So we would love to stand in prayer with you and stand beside you as you learn to surrender to the will of God. So drop it in the comments below. Tell me the one thing that you need to surrender so my team and I can stand with you in prayer. And then, my friend, I mentioned just a little bit ago the breath prayers in the video, what to pray when you don't know what to say. I'm going to actually drop that in the comments below for you, and I will put it on the screen, in just a moment for you as well. I pray this bless you today. You, my friend, can surrender. You can learn to surrender to the will of God. And I promise you, as difficult as it is, as hard and itchy and scratchy as it feels, it'll get easier every single time you learn to surrender. Every single time you do, God's going to show up in a big, big way, because that's just the kind of God we serve. Every single time when He sees that willing heart, that heart that is willing to surrender, even if you've had to surrender it 53 times today, He's going to show up big for you every single time. All right, my friend, I will see you in the next video.